stats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
It's been almost more than a year removed from me having the opportunity, and I'm not taking anything for granted, and I'm blessed and grateful.
Jameis Winston talking about jumping back into the starting role, this time with the New Orleans Saints. Speaking of being back, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Another Been There, Done That podcast. I'm going to bring in my partners, Justin Thomas, our producer, and, of course, Super Bowl winning linebacker Scott Shanle. We talked at the beginning of the preseason. We wanted to let a lot of things play out. Now this is your Saints season preview. We'll be here every week during the season, previewing games, kind of recapping games as well. And Shanle, as I bring you in first, Jameis Winston said the word grateful, I believe, at least 8 times in the last press conference. He's grateful for another opportunity, and a lot falls on the right arm of Jameis Winston for this Saints this season, doesn't it?
I mean, this is the storyline going into this year. A lot of Saints fans for the past few years have always wondered what would it look like without Drew Brees. We got a little taste of it the last couple of years. Teddy Bridgewater started a handful of games and Taysom last year. So we have a little bit of an idea. We just don't know what it's like from start to finish, what that is going to look like without Drew Brees. And, I think as Saints fans, we should all feel fortunate that we have a former number 1 overall pick that was willing to sit in the building for a year, learn from a Hall of Fame quarterback, learn from Coach Payton. And I think that should make Saints fans feel a little more ease knowing that Jameis Winston is your quarterback. And I don't think we're going to see the 30 for 30 that we saw in Tampa Bay, especially in this offense. But I just think having a former number 1 overall pick sitting in the building for the past, year and a half, I think we're sitting in as about a good position as we can hope for post Drew Brees.
Yeah, definitely. To me, we'll talk much more about Jameis Winston. We'll hear from him, his thoughts on what a crazy couple weeks it's been for everybody in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, but the Saints have had to adjust too. We're going to hear Sean Payton talk about his discussions recently on a bus with Jameis Winston and what specifics he's had to make to affect that decision-making process. Excuse me. But as I bring in producer Justin Thomas, you had a chance to watch the preseason games and everything that's happened. We're going to get into Bradley Roby coming in from the Texans. That's a nice added piece to the defensive puzzle for the Saints. But Justin, how are you feeling? We'll get your predictions. We'll get Shanley's predictions later on. But after the preseason, you feel any different about this team than you did maybe a month ago?
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel actually cautiously optimistic. Coming into preseason, I was a little bit more pessimistic. There's no doubt in my mind that Sean Payton's a great coach, and we still have a lot of really good talent on both sides of the ball. I think we can be very competitive. I'm
going to steal a little bit of Justin's thunder because Justin always has great points. In our pre-show meeting, he brought this up to me, and I want to get Shanley's take on this. You see some parallels, Justin, between this team and that 06 team where Shanle came in, and the expectations weren't high. Expectations are obviously higher now because of what Sean Payton's been able to do. But a lot of unproven guys on this football team. And, Jameis Winston about the same age as Drew Brees was in 06. And, Shanle, do you see any of that, or is this a different situation? I mean, obviously, it was Sean Payton's first year. He's established now. But do you see any parallels between, the first Saints team you played on in 06 and maybe this year's team that has the most undrafted free agents in the NFL? And you're relying on a lot of guys that, haven't been relied on in a lot of ways, especially at the linebacker position. I can point to a few other positions too.
Yeah, I think this team this year is still talented. My fear is this team is not as deep as they've been the past 4 or 5 years. But when you compare it to 06, I still think this team is more talented than we were in 06. We were a bunch of cast-offs, waiver wire claims right before the season, traded for some backups to become starters. So this team is definitely, I think, more talented. You look at the offensive line, obviously, of Alvin Kamara. Defensively, they're more talented than we were. We just, we kind of caught lightning in a bottle that year. We started off fast. We got some hope. We felt like we could do some things. won the division, won a home playoff game, and didn't play well in Chicago in the NFC Championship game. But everything just kind of culminated in being a much better season than anybody had thought we could have based on our talent level. But this year's team is definitely top to bottom on the roster. I think they still have more talent than we did in 06.
Well, one parallel, Shanle, is everything that's happened to this team pre the start of the season. I mean, you guys couldn't go to the Superdome in the preseason. You couldn't go there till week 3. A little different circumstances, but obviously Ida has wreaked havoc in the city of New Orleans, neighboring regions like Houma, Thibodaux. It's a mess, and it still is. A lot of people don't have power. The Saints had to evacuate. They went to Dallas, where you live right now. As a football player, it was a little bit different now because, I mean, a lot of these players are bringing their families with them in hotels. How distracting is that preparing for your season opener when you have all these things going on?
It can be a distraction. I think the one thing about it is you don't ever want to have to evacuate for a hurricane, obviously, because you don't know what's going to happen while you're away. But the one thing, if there is one silver lining that makes that process a little easier, is the fact that you were just in training camp. The fact that you were, at the time, whether you were in Jackson, Mississippi, or training camp, you're there from 7 in the morning till 10 at night, and you're already kind of away from home. So that makes it a little bit easier, but it's never easy on the families. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand how much families sacrifice for their husbands to be away in this profession. Because once the season starts, it's extremely demanding. And then you throw on top of it having to evacuate. You have a wife, kids, other family members, maybe living with some of the guys. So it's definitely stressful, but you realize that having that support system, and a lot of the families are really good knowing that this is a part of the job. This is part of what it entails. And so I think that makes it easier when you have a strong support system and a good family at home that realizes that.
Obviously, there are bigger problems in life than losing a home game. But the reality is the Saints lose a home game. They have to go to Jacksonville. Sean Payton's going to rally the troops here. Hey, guys, we win this one. We can get on a roll. We've been put in this situation. I'm sure he'll use that as motivation, won't he?
Oh, for sure. My only thing is I think the Saints were very strategic in picking this home game. My only problem is, why would you release why you chose this? Because if anything, you've given Aaron Rodgers motivation to prove you wrong. Right. Like I completely agree with, hey, you picked a warm, humid location for Green Bay. You picked a location that is tough, that Aaron Rodgers hasn't played well in. Just don't release that information. Hold that information in, because now these guys are going to be out to prove, okay, you don't think we can win in Jacksonville? We're going to show you. So that's my only problem. I have no problem with the selection of the stadium or where they picked it as their quote unquote home game, but I just wish they wouldn't have said why they did it.
And Shanle, they poked the bear, and Rodgers laughed at it in his press conference because our buddy Jeff Duncan got the inside scoop on this. Said, that's why the Saints did it, in part because of Rodgers' record in the state of Florida. And we saw it last year. He had a terrible game against the Bucs in Tampa, and he historically hasn't played well. But they're poking the bear. You could see it at Rodgers' press conference yesterday or this week.
Yeah, and you don't ever want to give any great player more fuel to the fire, because great players are usually great because they put a chip on their shoulder. They find something. You look at the Michael Jordans and the Tom Brady's and the Drew Brees. They always have something to prove people wrong about. And you don't want to give players like that another chip on their shoulder. You just kind of want to lull them to sleep. Hey, we're playing in Jacksonville. It's close to New Orleans. It's easy for our fans to get to. Just lay that out there, but don't say it had anything to do with you sucked when you played at this place. That's why we chose it.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks, let's go back to Jameis Winston. I've been more of a Taysom guy than you guys have been. I always thought Jameis would win the job, but let's get into interceptions with Jameis, because
is that
Are you, am I glossing over that a little bit?
Yes. Some revisionist history.
I just had to give you some flack for that, Mike, because we've been back and forth on Taysom. I just didn't remember you saying that Taysom wasn't going to win the job.
I said he had a chance, but I'm gonna revisit that right now. You're gonna like this.
Okay.
If Jameis is not going to throw 30 picks, or Taysom will be the starting quarterback in New Orleans. That's why I'm going to talk about interceptions, because here's the deal. I want to get your opinion on this, Shanle. I was really breaking down the numbers. Everybody remembers the 30 for 30 a 30-30 season with Jameis Winston. And yeah, it was bad. But that was the only season he played for Bruce Arians. His other seasons in the NFL, and this isn't a great stat, but it's not 30 interceptions. He averaged 17.6 interceptions. That's not 30. That number's lower. Drew Brees, if you take away his first year in the NFL where he didn't really play, he was backing up Doug Flutie, he averaged 12 interceptions a season. But the incredible number, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out here, Brees the last 4 seasons only threw 23 interceptions. So the last 4 seasons, he threw 7 fewer interceptions than Jameis had his last season in Tampa. That's not good. But I think Bruce Arians' no risk it, no biscuit did not work well for Jameis. They didn't have a backup they could put in there for him. I don't know where I am with Jameis and picks, but I do know this. This is what Sean Payton is going to do to try to help Jameis with his decision-making, as he talked about this week.
Creating a clean picture first with the eligible receivers, running backs, and tight ends, making sure that, what they're painting for the quarterback's eyes is pretty clear. I think it's extremely important.
All right, create a clear picture for the quarterback's eyes. He went on to say he wants Jameis to understand the types of progressions, and then he went really deep in the analytics, the old internal triangle progression. Sorry, Saints fans, I don't know what the heck that means. But Sean Payton is really trying to build this offense, and this is why he is great, around Jameis Winston's strengths, Shanle, but also improve his decision-making. And obviously that's been a focus this preseason and in the past year, just knowing he's going to be the heir apparent.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Jameis. Anytime you never want to be the guy who follows a Hall of Famer. You want to be the guy who follows the guy who was to the Hall of Famer. But still, Jameis Winston is relishing this opportunity because he gets to play for one of the best, if not the best, play caller in the NFL. He has a talented offensive line. He has maybe the best running back, all-around running back in the NFL behind him, and those two things are going to be key to helping Jameis. Is the offensive line needs to play like the Pro Bowl caliber guys they are, and Alvin Kamara needs to have one of his best seasons. That will take the pressure off Jameis, and that will set up play action pass. And I believe, Jameis is going to turn the ball over. Jameis is going to throw interceptions. I don't think he's going to be in the 20s, but he very well could be in the teens because I think this offense is going to be more aggressive than we saw with Drew. And a lot of those numbers you read, Mike, why Drew's number or interceptions were so low the last 4 years was because of the conservative approach by the offense because of Drew's arm strength.
Absolutely.
And I think you're going to see much more vertical passing game with Jameis's arm strength and, a la Meacham and Devery Henderson back to those types of big plays over the top and stretching defenses. And when you do that, just like you said in Tampa Bay, when you do that, there's chances of more interceptions. But now to defend Jameis in Tampa Bay, I think they were almost too aggressive. And you saw the evolution of Tom Brady. When Tom Brady first got there, it was Bruce Arians and Leftwich's offense, and he was turning the ball over until you kind of saw midseason where Brady's like, we don't need to do this. Let me put some tight ends in. Let me dink and dunk. Let me get some first downs, and let's just make it more of a methodical New England Patriots style offense. And I think that changed everything. But when you're super aggressive offensively, there's going to be turnovers.
It's been a long time since Jameis Winston's been a starter. We've had an Olympics, we've had a presidential election, we've had a lot of football games, a lot of crazy coronavirus stuff in the NFL, but he's back in it. But here's what we're forgetting, Shanle. This is his first start post LASIK surgery. It could be a whole new guy out there.
Oh, LASIK. We've made a lot of jokes about this, but we haven't seen the famous Jameis Winston squint like we saw at FSU and at Tampa Bay. So you're very well onto something here, Mike. We've kind of forgotten about this whole LASIK thing. Maybe it is going to be an all new, improved Jameis Winston. Watch Jameis go out there and set the record for least amount of interceptions and pass attempts. Wouldn't that be phenomenal?
Absolutely. And here's my thing about Jameis. He's such a wild card, Shanle. I think one thing is for certain. This will not be boring. It could be boring if he's going to check down more and hand off more, and that's probably a good thing for the Saints offense. But my point here is I think Jameis has an unbelievable upside with Sean Payton. This could be a lot of fun. The upside is huge for him, I think.
Yeah, just like I said a moment ago, what quarterback wouldn't want the opportunity to play for the best play caller we've seen in the last 15 years in the NFL? I mean, you could probably ask most quarterbacks. Some of them will pledge allegiance to their current coach or their coordinator. But if you got them off record, I think most of them, if not all of them, would say, I would love to play in the New Orleans Saints offense for Sean Payton and that play caller. So I think it's a tremendous situation for Jameis, and credit to Jameis Winston. You have to give Jameis credit. He was a former number 1 overall pick, swallowed his pride and sat in a chair and held a clipboard for a year. And then when free agency came, swallowed his pride again and said, you know what, my best situation is right here in New Orleans. I don't need to go to free agency and sign for a lesser team for more money. I'm going to prove that I'm still the player that I think I am right here in New Orleans for one more year.
Absolutely. I think you guys were a little nervous when Taysom was going toe-to-toe. He'd have a couple big highlights in practice, man. It looked like it was toe-to-toe for a while. Shanle, were you ever nervous that Taysom, and I may be right, that he had a chance to be the starter for this football team?
I was never really nervous, no, Mike. And I always have to preface this because I don't want to be a Taysom hater. I think Taysom is a phenomenal football player, but I've never said he's a quarterback. And all it took was for a couple preseason games. When he went to Baltimore, he actually looked pretty good. I'll give him credit. But then when we got into the next game and Jameis came in and the rhythm of the offense just felt better. And then when Taysom had to play with the twos, he was holding on to the ball too long. And when you compared them side by side like that after those 2 preseason games, I think it was evident who the better quarterback was.
Speaking of competition, having that competition, Jameis Winston says, has made him a better quarterback entering this 2021 season.
We made each other better, and this team grew while we were competing. I was blessed to get the nod, and I'm just grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my teammates for pushing me. I'm grateful for Taysom for pushing me, and us helping each other get better.
This is why podcasts are fun, Shanle, though. All right. What is the margin of error for Jameis? What's he going to have to do to lose this job? I mean, would he have to totally implode? Would it be a series of bad games? I mean, what's it going to take for possibly him to lose and Peyton to put Taysom in?
A slow start out the gate, losing games early on, I think would probably put the coaching staff into panic mode. But more so, it's about turnovers. It's about not being the player that everybody saw the last time we saw in Tampa. If you come in and turn the football over, I think that's going to be the fastest hook to anything. And I don't care who you are, Jameis, Taysom, it doesn't matter. Coach Payton will not put up with turning the football over. And I've said it before, he stood in front of our meeting room many times and said, when you carry the football or when you hold on to the football, you carry everyone's hopes and dreams in this organization. So he puts pressure on you to take care of the football because he understands that turnover ratio, turnover margin in the NFL wins and loses games. So if Jameis takes care of the football and he's completing a good percentage of his balls, they're not hitting the ground, he's being efficient, he'll hold on to the job. That's really what it comes down to.
Time will tell. I still have to see an extended body work from Jameis Winston, covering him in Tampa and seeing the ups and downs. And he always works hard in the offseason, always a popular guy in the locker room, but always throws interceptions. We've seen it back at Florida State, even when he won a Heisman, a national championship. I do think Sean Payton will cut down the picks, but boy, if it's a crucial pick 6 here and there, it's going to be an interesting year. But I do think Jameis Winston will be a better quarterback. Last thing with Jameis Winston, he spoke for the team in a lot of ways at his press conference this week, and how all of the moves in terms of going to Dallas and practicing at TCU and having to play in Jacksonville, how has that affected this football team? Jameis said it brought the Saints closer together.
I think we got a chance to grow as a team. I don't remember ever in my career being able to meet different guys, wives and fiancés and girlfriends and children. I think that camaraderie brought us closer. I mean, we introducing ourselves to different people that works for the New Orleans staff. They're meeting their kids, meeting their wives and husbands. So I think that was a great opportunity for us to grow closer together.
Well, that's good to hear. Before we get to the defense, though, we'll have another Jameis question for you guys. Latavius Murray was cut. Is this just a money deal, Shanle, or is this just another instance of Sean Payton saying may the best man win, and Latavius wasn't the best running back, and we're gonna give the job to whoever's the best?
Well, this is one instance. Everybody knows I think the Saints are a first-class organization, but this is one instance where I did not like this move. I didn't like the move from a talent standpoint. Jones Jr., listen, he had a great preseason, and maybe he earned that spot, and maybe he was better than Latavius day in and day out. I did not like waiting to cut a veteran running back 5 days before the first game.
Yeah.
And especially when you go and ask him for a salary reduction, you've known all along that you were probably going to do that. I didn't like that move because I don't think it makes the organization look good. And as a former player, I put myself in Latavius' position. You're coming off career highs in yards per carry, reception yards. It wasn't a performance issue. It was a salary issue. And that salary had been there since March. So you knew it was going to be an issue. I wish they would have made a move earlier in the preseason and allowed Latavius to go play somewhere else and to settle and get his feet set. Because I think he earned that right. He's been, from all accounts, he's been a good pro. He's been a good teammate. I did not like the waiting to the very end to make that move, and kind of it felt like you were pinning Latavius in the corner and saying, we're going to wait till the last minute so that you have to accept this salary reduction. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that part of it.
I agree, and that's very un-Saints-like. And Sean Payton seems the longer he's a head coach, the more honest he is with the media. We've seen it with Michael Thomas and his feelings about when he had surgery this offseason. But Payton really waxed poetic about Latavius Murray in the presser, that he's been a good teammate and this was hard. But I agree, the timing of it, especially if you're a veteran, when spots are filling up faster than they would have been a couple weeks ago, I didn't think that was a nice move by the Saints. All right, let's talk defense. And the big story is our man, the savior from the Houston Texans, Shanle. It was the big void opposite Marshawn Lattimore with the Jackrabbit, Janoris Jenkins not being around. Bradley Roby, the former first-round pick of the Broncos, he's had 10 career picks, 3 for touchdowns. Does this save the defense in a lot of ways, Shanle? Even though he's not playing that first game, how big a news is this for you, a former defensive guy?
Yeah, it is big news because this was the position that everybody going into the draft felt like you had to address early on. And especially when you look at the Sean Payton's career with the Saints, when the secondary's been shored up, we've had really good teams. And when we haven't had great secondaries, Brandon Browner era, things don't go well. So I think that makes all the Saints fans panic when you don't have good corners. They addressed it. They were trying to address it all offseason, and they finally did. So I'm fine with the secondary. I think the secondary has really good players. It's the depth at the defensive tackle spot that worries me.
Yeah.
And somewhat at the linebacker position as well, because we have a couple draft picks that we've drafted fairly high the last couple of years that aren't listed as starters, and that kind of worries me as well. But the secondary is the least of my concerns right now.
Yeah, and in the draft, we kept waiting for them to maybe trade up and get somebody, and then it was the Richard Sherman, it was whoever the hot big name was, and I give the Saints credit on this one for getting a Roby, a proven guy, and then a Marcus Trufant too. They have some depth there. I mean, it's been crazy with P-Rob, Patrick Robinson retiring, and then King Crawley having a good camp, and he's kind of banged up, and Paulson Adebo, he's still young. You hate to throw him out there, so I think he can learn. So I think this is a good situation. But let's talk about Quan Alexander and young linebackers, stepping up in this camp. I thought, were you surprised that they brought back Quan and that he could contribute maybe as soon as he can coming off that big injury?
Yeah, first of all, Quan being as healthy as he is coming off of that type of injury with the Achilles, it's a phenomenal recovery. And I hope he's 100%, and I hope he feels good about where he is in that recovery process to go out there and have other large men pushing on you, and so he doesn't re-injure it. But I wasn't surprised they re-signed Quan because I think they liked his energy level. They liked the way he fit with the defense last year. And especially what he could do in the nickel game with him and DeMario in coverage. So I know they liked him. It came down to salary for Quan. We all know that. That's why he got released. And they signed him to a fairly good deal. My concern was when they re-signed Quan, I felt like it spoke volumes about Pete Werner and Zach Bond. And that concerned me because these are guys you drafted high. These are guys who should be stepping on the field and playing. More so Zach Bond at this point in the second year. Pete's still a rookie. You got to let those guys work that out and figure it out as a rookie. But when they re-signed Quan, I was more concerned about how the young guys were progressing than anything else.
Overall, though, this defense to me, I mean, it was a great unit a year ago. And I agree with your point. We both do a lot of radio shows and do a lot of different things, talk to people about this team. I think, I don't know if fragile is the right word, but boy, they can't afford. I mean, you hate to enter a season, Shanle, where you really can't afford almost any injuries, because there's a difference in this Saints team really on both sides of the football in terms of depth. So you're walking a fine line, especially defensively right now.
Yeah, and that's to my point earlier when I was comparing our 06 team to this team. This team is, they have more talent than we did in 06. But what we need to compare is this team currently to the Saints teams we've seen the past 4 years. And this team currently has way less depth. When you look across the roster, when you look at the backups, when you look at even some of the starters, this team is not as talented as we've been the last 4 years. Now, does that mean you're not going to go as far? Does that mean you're not going to win division? It certainly doesn't. But I still think you're 1 or 2 injuries away from having real concerns at certain positions on this team. And, one of the positions is wide receiver. Skilled guys, yes. Inexperienced. And you're kind of counting the clock down, waiting for Michael Thomas to get back. I'm sure Jameis Winston is doing the same thing.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we've talked about both sides of the football. Justin, you know what time it is now. If you're new to the podcast, that is the theme song for More Likely, 3 hypotheticals. And before we get to More Likely, I'm going to give you we have 3 questions, but I want to go around and ask you an easy one first. Maybe it's not so easy. Shanle, your man Sean Payton, no visor. You got the ball cap. Do you want the visor back? If they start losing, is he going to bring the visor back? Which look do you like for Sean Payton?
Before the loss ever happens, I need the visor back. That's my coach. That's the look. What are you doing, coach?
Right.
I mean, was Drew Brees the reason for the visor? Maybe it was the Brees visor era. I don't know, but I need the visor back.
When they build the statue of Sean Payton one day, they're going to have a problem. Maybe do we put a visor on him or do we put a ball cap on him? We'll see if this trend continues. Justin, do you care visor or ball cap for Sean Payton?
I mean, maybe his hair's thinning on top and he doesn't want a sunburn or something. Look, it's definitely a new era, so I guess he's got to go with the ball cap instead of the visor. Man. I don't care either way, but it is iconic seeing Sean Payton with the visor. So.
All right. More likely questions are usually kind of tough sometimes because I try to stump you, but this is going to be mainly predictions, except for this first one. We're going to do kind of an over-under because, gambling's cool now, man. Anybody can gamble. It's okay to talk about it, and we can use gambling terms, and that's okay with the world. So I'm going to do a little over-under, okay? More likely, Justin, you go first because we make you go first. Shanle has, we'll let him think about this a little more. Over-under, though, Jameis Winston – 15 interceptions this year, over 15 or under 15 interceptions?
Until I see evidence to the contrary, I'm not saying he's going to do 30 for 30 again, but I'm going to go over 15. I'm going to go the upper, not more than 20, somewhere between 15 and 20.
Okay. Shanle, over or under 15 picks for your man Jameis?
I'm going to go over. Now, before Saints fans get worried, you have to remember there's another game. Okay, so we have 17 games.
That's
so I think 15 to 20 would – I think the coaches may settle for that, to be honest. 15 to 20, as aggressive as they're going to be on offense with throwing the ball downfield more, running the ball with Alvin behind this really talented offensive line. I'm going to go somewhere 17 or 18. One a game.
I'm saying definitely over. He's averaged 17.6 if you take away the 30 for 30. So I'm definitely over with Jameis Winston. I think that's one of the easiest, more likely questions of all. Jameis, I hope you prove me wrong. But if you go too much over, my man Taysom's coming in, baby. So I don't know if you want to see that or not. All right, Saints record this season. I see a lot of people picking 9 wins, 9 or 10 wins. So I'm going to go, and in 17 games, Shanle, you made a good point. So, 9 wins, that would be 8 losses. 10 wins, that would be 7 losses, right? So I'm going to go over under 9 wins for the New Orleans Saints, Justin.
All right. I looked at the schedule. I looked at the games that they would lose. I'm going to go over, but I'm only going 1 game over. I think the Saints could get to 10-7. I don't really see them going more than 11. I think 10-7 is a good number, so that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we'll get to my pick in just a second, but I actually just try to go, here's a loss, here's a win, which is so dangerous. before season. But Shanle, over or under 9 wins?
I'm going to go over, and I think 10-7 is like the safe pick post Drew Brees, but I think 11-6 is definitely doable. There's definitely talented teams. Starting with Green Bay, nobody wants to start with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. The earliest part of the schedule is pretty tough, but you get to play the Jets. I don't think Atlanta's going to be that good. Carolina still does not scare me. Philadelphia. So there are some good teams, though. There really are. I mean, Buffalo's going to be a contender in the AFC. But I think there's enough teams on there that when you compare talent, that the Saints are still more talented than. And I keep going back to the offensive line and Kamara. That combination will be a handful of teams on this schedule alone.
All right, yeah, I agree with both you guys. I'm going over, and it's crazy. They could lose to the Bucs in both games. They could lose 2 of their first 3 games. I have them. Well, I'll tell you that in just a second. They could lose 2 of their first 3 games. Okay, they could lose back-to-backs against the Seahawks and Bucs. They could lose both games to the Bucs. They can lose to the Bills on Thanksgiving and still win 10 games. So I think 10-7 is a safe pick, and I like that pick. And if Jameis is under 17, it could get real interesting. It could go to 11, heaven forbid 12 maybe, but I like 10-7 for your New Orleans Saints. All right, before we get our predictions for the Packers opener in Jacksonville, of all places, I want your Super Bowl predictions, beginning with Justin Thomas. Who's going to be in the big game and who's going to win the big game? And we're recording, Justin. At least you're recording right now.
Right. I can always go back and change it, though, if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
All right. My Super Bowl picks. The 2 I'm picking are for reasons because, well, I'll just get to it. I think it's going to be the Bills.
Wow.
And I'm going to go with the Rams. I would love to see the Bills win a Super Bowl after getting so close 4 years in a row. It just seems like they're due one. It's a really good team. And then I'm going with the Rams because I really like Matt Stafford. I would like to see him have a winning season, do well in the postseason. I also think that's a really talented team. I'm going, Bills, Rams, and you win a winner, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to go with the Bills. I think they're just really good. They were close last year. I think they're going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship and win it all.
Would it be the reverse in Buffalo if they won a Super Bowl? Would they just, Jim Kelly and the guys, just have their own champagne party like the Dolphins? Would it be like the reverse of that? I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But Shanle, Super Bowl prediction, do you have one for me?
I do. Unfortunately, when you look at the NFC, it's easy to say Tampa Bay because this was the first time we've seen a returning champion return all starters. That's unprecedented. But as we know in the NFL, it doesn't matter. Every season takes on a life of its own. They're going to have injuries pop up that they didn't have last year. They're going to have different things pop up. And I felt like they got hot at the right time last year because we remember what the Saints did to them at Tampa late in the season. They just got hot at the right time. So I'm going to go with Green Bay out of the NFC versus I do like the Bills. I think the Bills are good, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs upgrade their O-line. And as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Andy Reid calling plays, until somebody knocks them out of the AFC, I think Chiefs, Packers, and I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers to win the Super Bowl this year. I think Aaron Rodgers gets it one more time, and then it's going to be a tough decision for him whether or not he leaves Green Bay after this year.
You know, I'm writing this down, and it's funny because I thought you were going Bills, and then you quickly went Chiefs, so I crossed it out.
Seriously.
So if the Bills make it, I'm going to have to send this to both you guys at the end of the year that I circled Bills for Justin, and I had Bills, but then I crossed it out and put Chiefs for Shanle. So you go Packers over the Chiefs. Justin goes Bills over the Rams. I'm not picking the Bucs either. I live in Tampa, and you know, I know everything is right for the Bucs right now. They're having all 22 starters back, but I don't know if that's always a good thing. You know, I'll never forget doing a post-game show in Tampa last year, and the Buccaneer PR guys, I was using their little suite so we could do the Zooms with Breeze and everybody. The looks on their faces, if you would have asked them, hey, I think you guys are going to win the Super Bowl, they probably would have laughed. Nobody thought the Bucs were going to win the Super Bowl at that point. It's a credit to the coaching staff and to Brady for turning things around and going on that run. I just don't see that for them this year. They're a year older. I don't think Brady really lit it up in the playoffs last year. It was all about the Bucs defense. The Bucs defense is the strength of that football team. I think the receivers are injury prone. Antonio Brown, I never liked that signing. Frankly, he could be a distraction. Never really think the offensive line, they played Tristan Wirfs as a great player, but they're vulnerable too. The Saints offensive line is better. I think the Bucs are a good team. I think they'll win the division. I don't think they go back. I love the Rams. The Rams are top heavy, kind of like the Saints, but boy, they have more talent on both sides of the football. I'm happy for Matthew Stafford. Hope he has a good year. Hope he proves everybody that he is a great quarterback if he has that supporting cast. But boy, I love the Chiefs. If they can protect Patrick Mahomes, I think they're the best team in football. I think they would have obviously given the Bucs a better game in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to say Chiefs over the Rams. All right, our last prediction, outside more likely. Shanle already gave us his Super Bowl prediction. I almost know what you're going to say, but you have Jacksonville hosting your New Orleans Saints against the Green Bay Packers. The first start for Jameis Winston in over a year. You have Aaron Rodgers. You're poking the bear, him coming down. He's fired up. What do you think, Justin Thomas? Who's going to win Saints-Packers in the season opener?
I think it's easy. We know what you're going to get with Aaron Rodgers. We don't know what we're going to get with Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston's good. I think the Saints team's good. I just think this Packers team is better. Saints aren't playing at home, so they don't have that home field advantage. I have to go with the Packers. Until I see something otherwise and the Saints can prove that they can play good teams and win, it's going to be the Packers for me. I do think it's going to be close. I potentially see a shootout. I'm going to go high 30s for Green Bay and mid to low 30s for.
Give me a specific score.
All right.
So you look like a genius if it happens.
38 to, let's go, I don't know, 32.
All right, that'll be the Open if that's the final score in a week. That's going to be the Open. You nailed it, Justin Thomas. All right, Shanle, you picked the Packers to win the Super Bowl. I kind of feel like I know what's coming here.
Hey, would I be surprised if the Saints get week 1 victory over the Green Bay Packers? I would not. I really wouldn't, because I think this Saints team, it all depends on how the game unfolds. If the Saints can take care of the football, run Alvin Kamara, and play solid defense and not get into a shootout, they have a chance to win. But if they get into a shootout and you start throwing the ball more than you want to keep up with Aaron Rodgers, that's where I think it's advantage Packers because of Aaron Rodgers and his greatness. But Alvin Kamara, if you can stay ahead of the chains, I could see Kamara leaving this game with between 150 and 180 yards rushing. I believe you can run the ball on this Green Bay defense, but it's everybody wants to do that. Nobody really gets to do that because of Aaron Rodgers. I think it's going to be 31, Green Bay 31, Saints 21.
Wow. I have something very close to that. Yeah, I just don't think this is a good first game in a lot of ways for the Saints. And I know Jameis Winston said they were brought together. It's been a crazy couple of weeks for this football team. And that's not to say that obviously compare it to what everybody in New Orleans and surrounding areas have gone through. I know football is different than real life, but I just think it's a lot to ask to go to Jacksonville and beat a Green Bay team that's super talented. And frankly, in a lot of ways, if things would have happened differently and they would have put the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands, would have made a Super Bowl over Tom Brady and the Bucs. But if ifs and nuts were candy and butts, we know how that goes. I still think Jameis plays decent. He makes some mistakes. I think Kamara has a big game. But I just think it's too much. I think Aaron Rodgers and the Packers win 31-24. Okay, so we agree the Saints aren't going to be in the Super Bowl. We agree they're not going to win the first game. And we agree, for the most part, that Sean Payton should wear a visor moving forward. We'll see if any of that happens in the coming weeks. But we'll be with you throughout the whole season. Please give us your input. Where are we on Twitter, Justin?
@Dundad Podcast.
Yes, and we're on all the platforms. So please subscribe. Give us your feedback. We're on iTunes and Twitcher and Spotify and everywhere there's a podcast, you can find your Been There, Done That podcast. So for my partners, producer Justin Thomas and Super Bowl winning linebacker Scott Shanle, I am merely Mike Nabors. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you next week.